It is Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Revolution Radio, are you ready to get your body electrified? Well, it's time to clear your mind and let the good doctor shift your paradigm with keys to keeping the balance in nature and restoring the body back to vibrant health. So Revolution Radio, join him on air right now at 347-688-2902 because it is time for an alternate perspective with Dr. Wil Spencer.
Hello, it's another Wednesday afternoon, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is an alternate perspective. I forget the date. Must be about, what, the 30th or something like that?
It's the 29th of January, 2014.
Oh, thank you, Dave. And this is Dave, our producer. Thank you so much, Dave. We are on freedomslips.com right now, a listener-sponsored network. We're also being simulcast at wolfspiritradio.com and amongst other places. Thank you. We're joined today for this ongoing conversation with this guy who keeps writing these books, who has his website, vaccinefraud.com, which is your portal to a vaccine reality. Patrick Jordan, are you here today? Or kinda?
Howdy, everybody.
And we're also joined with Dr. No, a good friend of ours who likes to, join in the conversation to add another perspective, a different view to broaden your horizons. Dr. No, are you here?
Good afternoon, Mr. Wu.
Howdy, from where I am. So, hopefully you can hear me. We're doing this on the phone today, and the signal is, we got a couple bars, so we should be fine. So, chat room, if you're going to make any comments into the chat room today, questions, please put them in capital letters if they're questions. And hopefully between Dave and Dr. No, they can monitor the chat rooms for us and keep us filled in there because I'm on the phone as well as Patrick, so we don't have access to the chat rooms today. And there's a call-in numbers. Studio A call-in number. Can one of you guys, because I don't have that written down here.
347-688-2902 for Revolution Radio. And for Wolf Spirit Radio, the new number is 702-879-4770.
Okay, so if you want to call in and join the conversation, that'd be great, either by chat or phone. Otherwise, because we don't practice for these shows. I really enjoy the impromptu side of a conversation because you really don't go over to your friend's house with the notes that you're going to talk about something. And really, this is the juicy part of a conversation. When you just are in the moment, tapped into that universal mind, whatever you want to call that, and the information just flows. That's really why we have our scribe with us, Patrick Jordan, who's got his little pen quill over there just scratching away to make sure we don't miss all the good stuff.
Don't talk too fast because I've only got 6 pages left in this current notebook. So talk really slow so I can fill up the pages.
I find it interesting And here, we're going to have to do, the biology of aggression thing, talk to it very lightly, because right now we're on the road and in the process of moving, so my biology of aggression book got put onto the shelf. So, but we're getting questions. People are actually, I really thank you for the emails and the Skype messages and the phone calls, because people are starting to really appreciate what we're doing here. At least I feel it, because people are starting to join in and say, I'd like to talk about this, or I'd like to talk about that, or what do you think about this? Can you guys talk about that so I can listen about your opinions? Have you got any questions or emails in that regard, either one of you two? Because I've got a couple things that we could chat about, because, and there again, I've got a couple emails and some calls.
I would like to enter into a thread that could actually span the next 2 hours. A topic that was sent to us by a really valued list member on scopolamine, which is also known as twilight sleep, which figures right into the biology of aggression. I mean, you couldn't make a more tailor-made topic outside of reading from the textbook.
I think everything that we talk about has a relevance in with the biology of aggression in one fashion or another, amongst other things, because everything pretty much that we talk about is related to everything else. So go right ahead, unless Dr. No has some anything else, but otherwise, I'm just sitting here listening.
Scopolamine works for me. Works for everybody, actually.
Why do you start my day with low oxygen, man? That's just too funny.
And why aren't you sharing it, Dr. New?
What do you think? That stuff grows on trees? Oh, wait a minute. It does grow on trees.
Oh, man, you're just too on top of it.
You guys are, I'm missing out. What are you, I can't even hear what you're talking about.
Okay, scopolamine is a drug that's derived from a tree, so that's why he was making the joke. I'm out of that loop. Okay. My first introduction to it was that the people in the troop carriers going to, like, the beaches of Normandy were suffering so intense seasickness that the U.S. military was actually dosing them with scopolamine. And all you have to do is know the history and the action of this drug. It's a hypnotic. And it's like, what better way could you get people to throw themselves into the meat grinder in any aspect of life, whether they were at war or not, than to dose them with scopolamine? Well, it's also part of this thing called twilight sleep, which is what they give to women during childbirth. And so they can't even remember that they gave birth. That's how much of a mind wipe this thing gives. And so the next shoe to drop is, well, what does it do to the fetus? The actually birthing baby, for goodness sakes. If it is a mind wipe drug to begin with in adults, it's got to carry over into the kids. And so how long do these effects last?
Well, to rewind a little bit before then, you can't understand the insidious part of what Patrick just said until you go back. It comes from the Colombia. Mostly it's from Colombia, and they call it the devil's breath, and it comes from the borrachero tree, or borrachero, however you say it. It is the Colombian equivalent of the zombie drug for the Haitians. Very, very low dosage. You can inhale it, like somebody could blow it at you, and you can inhale it through your nose. And basically speaking, you're completely open to suggestion, you're happy about it, and when you wake up, you have absolutely no recollection of anything that happened. It's almost like the perfect zombie drug. So that was its original usage, was, in that whole cultural ritual thing. And then when Westerners, discovered it, whatever, not only did the CIA and intelligence take great interest in it as well. But after they were done with all their research, they decided to market it. It's marketed pharmaceutically. It's not just like a government thing. I mean, doctors prescribe this stuff for seasickness.
So had it been synthesized when doctors prescribe? Is that the synthesized version or the actual herb? Because I don't really know if they can even actually prescribe an herbal thing. It has to be synthesized, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it's the synthesized version.
And standardization is what the U.S. pharmaceutical, USP, U.S. pharmaceutical grade, is designed for, so that you have a chemically pure dose that you can assume will have a certain effect as it is metered out. And the thing that you will come to find out when you read the biology of aggression is that low titrated doses of chemicals is their favorite method of delivery because it can ensure that you have consistent results. Because one of the things that they were moaning about in the biology of aggression is, well, we tried this and it only worked in, let's just say 70 or 80% of the population, and they wanted 100% coverage. But they found if they used slow and steady dosing, and the only way you can do that is through standardization, is that they got better coverage of control. And this is all about the control of aggression. Because the stories that were sent to us by the list member included what Dr. No was talking about, that these Colombian criminals would blow the zombie dust into people's faces and then just engage them in stealing their own money from themselves. So they would open up safes, they would go to banks, empty bank accounts, they would help them rob their own houses in this zombie state. But let's take a look at it, folks. Let's be very critical. You might think, well, that's just a bunch of dumb tourists that got taken advantage by a bunch of backwood Colombians. You tell me how an entire nation bails out to the tune of trillions of dollars, banks and insurance companies, without a military uprising. That speaks to me exactly of the kind of traits that are elicited when you're exposed to the zombie dust.
So they must be putting the zombie dust in everything then, as well as maybe filtering the entire population, because I don't know really anybody that is really in tune to what you're talking about with the bank bailout and all this criminal fraud going on right in front of our noses. I mean, I can see it. You can see it. I'm talking the mass of, basically the Walmart shoppers. These people have no clue. How come they don't have a clue and we know something, and yet the bulk of humanity out there, it just allows this in this country to take place when you got these other countries that are an uprising, even if those uprisings are real or inspired by, let's just say, some of these other alphabet agencies sponsoring these uprisings.
Speaking of the Walmart crowd, I just dropped a link in Skype and a link in the Wolf Spirit chat room if somebody wants to copy it over to Rev chat room. The Vice channel did a half-hour program on scopolamine, so it's kind of like the entertaining layman's background on it.
What channel did that?
The Vice Network. Shocking.
I've never heard of that. I'm out of the news media loop, so describe that for me, please.
The Vice Network is literally kind of centers around that, crazy vices that people have. They do extreme sports, they do, pop culture woo, the zombie thing, basically anything like that. So they give you what Will just described. They give you the tourist trap version of scopolamine, but they leave out the military pharmacological use of it, obviously. So it's a version of the history of the devil's breath for the entertainment crowd.
So it would be more of the propaganda machine then, running its programs.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this is a fun recreational drug. And they view it as the most deadly drug in the world, or the most dangerous drug in the world. I'm sorry. That's the title of it. The Devil's Breath, most dangerous drug in the world.
I hate to break it to the world, but if you know your history, it was known and used throughout India by the Thugi cult. And they were known as a religious cult that worshipped Kali. And they would strangle their victims. It was an act of worship. And so they would use basically a form of scopolamine gotten from a nightshade family plant and rob them and then kill them. So this has been going on for thousands of years, man. This is straight out of India.
The Catholic Church has been doing that for eons. I mean, I come from an that's very Catholic and very Europeanized influence in northern Minnesota. And it's very common that is widely known for my entire life. I knew this as a child because most of the school I went to, public school, on Wednesdays had to go to some kind of religious deal over at the Catholic Church. And a few kids died, boys, mind you, in these sexual sacrifices that these children didn't make it through. That's just one subculture through the Catholic religion that does this, whether they're using these other herbs or synthetic things or not, but they're basically doing similar practices. So if India is one, here's the whole Catholic. I mean, that's like one of the biggest terroristic organizations on the planet. So that's been going on for a long, long time.
So let's bring this home in terms of linguistics. The religion of the Thugi cult, the Kali worshippers. I said it that way because I'm pretty sure that's the way they pronounce it in India. But our common term of a criminal that you would call a thug, oh, he's just a common criminal, he's a thug. That's where it came from, the thugs, the Thugi cult. And so we have this golden thread of things that are common to our collective knowledge that we have no idea what the origin is, and all you have to do is look. I mean, it's word etymology. Just look it up and you will find that there is this rich history of drugging people to death on this planet.
We know the British had great success with that with the Chinese. There's a grand scale for you.
Nicely done.
But it's not only drugs. You can get the same effect, and this is what the Romans, the Roman religion deemed the witch cult. They were actually using pharmacopoeia again. They were using fungus. This is the ergot connection. Using nature to their benefit to protect them from not just the British, but the whole Roman Empire, as well as the Catholic Empire, as a survival, I mean, for their own benefit.
Well, we've spoken about this before as far as the toxicity of the food that we eat. The plant kingdom by orders of magnitude outweighs the number and variety and lethalness of toxins in it as composed to the most severe venoms in the animal kingdom.
This is great because one of the comments that was asked for us to talk about was similar to this. Us three were pretty much familiar with the Morgellons thing, okay? We now know, at least I do, that the amount of plant material that is suggested for people to eat, I'm seeing anyhow, that is feeding the pathogens and the parasites in our body that are really not feeding us. And they're actually these little critters. This is the nanotechnology, the microtechnology that's being forced onto the public in basically the NATO countries, is not, if not all the world, to some fashion. That the high amount of plant materials being fed to the pathogens and parasites are then kind of causing problems inside the human body. We can talk about that more in any other fashion, but that particular topic is very big because with Morgellons especially, the expression of these fibers and chips and all these other things coming onto people's bodies, a lot of it is plant-based material, polymers that only come from plants, and now they're expressing out of people's bodies.
Does that have anything to do with the fact that it's plant material, that the expression of Morgellons is unique from individual to individual because they're self-assembling with the other particular biologies of each individual?
There are some characteristic differences with genetic makeup, but across the board, it has to do with the different types of pathogens and parasites in you and how things get expressed that way. The whole genetic thing is another thing, another avenue that's just coming about because the naval intelligence, the military, is doing open atmospheric testing in certain regions on the planet with certain genetic structures. Like right now, the northwest quadrant of Canada and all of Alaska right now is under some kind of genetic experiment, if you want to look at it that way, that's taking place right now because we're finding some extremely isolated bacterial, pathogenic and parasitic expressions going on up there that are affecting certain genetic groups. And it's not happening anywhere else. For instance, mad cow, CGV or whatever, crucioid, how Patrick can say the Latin or whatever the heck it is. It's mad cow in humans is rampant right now in that part of the world. And I was told off the record by some retired military clients of ours that they're doing genetic testing for certain things up in that area, and mad cow is used as some kind of vector carrier at the virus. Hey, we're back. This is an alternate perspective from me, Will, and ongoing conversations. We have Patrick Jordan as well as Dr. Noel with us.
Two things that I'd like to bring up, Will, is
Sure.
the history of this tree, this cork tree that yields scopolamine, goes all the way back to the Aborigines. They would actually use parts of the tree to put in the water, not unlike the South Americans using rotenone to go fishing, because it would paralyze the eels, and all the Aborigines would have to do is go collect the eels that were floating at the top of the water. And if we
that's like
believe,
fishing.
I know what you're going to say before you say it, man.
Okay, you go ahead.
No, do it, man. Do it. Do it. This is too funny because you're a farm boy.
That's like fishing with dynamite.
I knew you were going to say it, man. there's some things I don't do on air because you don't know if the city slickers and people that haven't experienced like living through the Depression would even know about. But I knew this 80-year-old farmer. He would just brag with a smile on his face of going fishing with dynamite. It's the easiest way to make a catch. But if we believe all the hype that we're given on history, that the Aborigines have had like a civilization for at least 30 to 40,000 years, we're talking that kind of intimate knowledge with your environment and what you can accomplish with just the phytochemicals. Just like dipping a tree branch in the water, for goodness sakes. And so you take that 30 to 40,000 years of advanced knowledge, and it's always been my contention that the enemy that we face has at least 1,800 to 2,000 years of advance of technology on us. And it's like they're playing with us like the Aborigines would play with the eels. That's the way they're treating us.
Well, enter the biology of aggression, and back to the 50s again, which just, the next decade after Operation Paperclip, where the German scientists and insanos were brought to this country now to basically play with the people at will and, enter in, the 14th Amendment, if you want to look at it that way. So then everyone's been deemed basically lab rats. It fits.
And speaking of lab rats, to tie into what you said before the break, Will, because this is a contention of mine that people don't want to see. If you have any experience with the military whatsoever, you realize that asset maximization is critical to them, and the popular media or the alternate media wants us to believe that these chemtrails are all about aluminum, barium, and whatever, and they drill that into them. But what people don't realize is the whole concept of chemtrails, all it is a delivery system, okay? Just because you see a plane spraying chemtrails doesn't mean it's spraying the same thing everywhere. And plus, there are actually subcarriers for aerosol distribution as well. And this is part of the whole, what you're talking about, the paperclip thing, is localization and distribution. It's, watch one hand, while the other hand's doing something else. So while everybody's looking for aluminum and barium, you have organic compounds. There's been white blood cells, platelets, DNA discovered in chemtrails. There's been all sorts of things discovered in chemtrails. But people, once again, don't realize that even in their quote-unquote enlightenment, they're being kept in the dark because they've been conditioned to believe that, unless you find aluminum and barium, you're just wrong.
Yeah, aluminum, barium, and strontium are the main three that I see that the vomiters blathering away about. And really, those three, aluminum, barium, and strontium, like we have those in our database in several different kinds of that type of element, and it hardly ever shows up on scans in people's bodies. Like the body is okay to deal with that. It's not really bothering them. And that's why I say, I truly then believe then chemtrails are really cotton candy being sprayed up there like a shuck and jive to keep people looking and pointing, going, oh my, look at that, oh my, look at that, when you then have all these other things that are really harming you that are like these genetic weaponries, like these viruses, like the grip. Like there's over 100 different strains of the grip virus. Nobody even talks about grip. I'm seeing them show up all the time on scans. Mad cow is showing up in certain areas, all, pretty good. So I agree with you there, Dr. No, that it is a pure shuck and jive military operation to keep you looking at the cotton candy clouds while there's something else going on. It's just that simple. That's my reality.
Well, there is a very large portion of research involving chemtrails that involves spraying prions.
Well, that's what the whole mad cow thing is. That's part of prion or the prion creation. Whether they're spraying prions or they're spraying the precursors, they get into the body, and then the body is then distorted genetic weaponry, so the body then starts to create these prions themselves. I mean, see, here's the research. I was into Magellan's research for like 4 years. I was with for a while. That's why I approached Mr. Scumbag Carnicom and his delusional insanity over there of it's all fraud. I was with the Magellan's research group for about 2 years, went to conferences, and they didn't even want to hear anything I had to say when I'm like, okay, so people coming to us with Magellan's and Limes, and they were getting better. But yet these two groups of supposed researchers were not looking at anything applicable other than they're just having mass amounts of white papers that mean nothing and keeping everybody busy looking. There's another shuck and jive again. We have these shuck and jives all over the place to keep everybody away from the reality, what's going on. I mean, if that isn't a military operation, I don't know what is.
A minor top that bait and switch, duck and jive, is the fact that these that produce scopolamine, you also get atropine. It's all known because the nightshade family that everybody talks about, you know, your basic tomato, potato, eggplant, henbane, deadly nightshade, belladonna. They all have this in there. And by the way, the tree that produces the scopolamine is from the nightshade family. So atropine is just going to be a part of it. Well, if you look into atropine, it is great for people that have hay fever. And so whether or not you're able to read the ingredients on your prescription drugs, or maybe even over-the-counter drugs, who knows, and understand them at a chemical level, the people that make this stuff know what they're doing. They know they're putting hypnotics and other kind of mind control agents in there because atropine actually shows up in the biology of aggression. The entire world is under like a potion, a spell casting, a thrall. But they just keep pursuing it because you can go to a store and buy something wrapped in plastic and it looks really nice and it relieves symptoms.
Well, you could eat your pasta, your organic sprouted bread, and you could have maybe some gluten-free muffins and have the exact same mind-altering experience take place because you're feeding the funguses and bacteria that are creating those mycotoxins, which have the natural act of altering your brains just like LSD going on, just by eating your food. You don't even have to buy a drug or a pharmaceutical over the counter, or you can eat actually organic. How about this? Your organic flax seeds or your organic oatmeal. It'll do the exact same thing. So then the ergot is created, and now you have this mind-altering, mind-numbing LSD experiencing taking place on eating organic.
So
whether your poison is conventional, pharmaceutical, or... go ahead, Patrick.
We must have a terrible delay. Go ahead with your thought, because I know what I'm going to say.
Okay, so this is why I tell people, whether you're eating organic or conventional or you're grazing out in the yard, if you're eating these food-like substances that are touted to be good for you, you have to really look at your pathogenic and your parasitic load that you're carrying in your body, which is epidemic, by the way. Eating a lot of these substances that they're telling you to eat actually causes you harm and causes you mind-altering mycotoxins to be created that break your nervous system down, that cause some of these about. So go ahead, Patrick.
Will, I see where you're going with this. We actually opened this topic up in Wolf Spirit Radio on Monday. The topic of things like turmeric. And I consume turmeric. It actually takes the edge off of some of my symptoms, but I do it with the full knowledge that it is a gene silencing agent, which gives me great concern. So it's one of those toss-ups of I feel better when I take it, but I know it's shutting a gene off. Now, why does it shut the gene off? What gene is it shutting off? And if I only consumed it with the idea of I take this, I feel better, I would not be then paying any attention to the reason that I felt bad in the first place is because we are under planetary military assault. And therefore, I would not investigate what the source of the problem was and go about trying to remedy that instead of just putting a Band-Aid on it. And that's the shuck and jive that you were talking about earlier.
That's a shuck and jive that's taking place in the alternate natural health side of, the gray coats that you call it, that whole gray coat industry. That is what's taking place right now, and it's very simple to just, I get a lot of emails from people that subscribe to a lot of these other natural health guru people, and they are touting, when one person says it, and then you have 50 other of these little newspaper, these so-called, these email blasts go out, oh, you got to have turmeric. Okay, last month it was eating the black seeds. This month it is eating the turmeric. The month before that, it was eating coconut oil. You see, so this industry is basically setting you up for a fall somewhere along the line, touting these miracle cures for the month.
So the only way you can make those fish jump from one part of the pool to the other is through control mechanisms. And because now we have like an unbroken chain of the use of scopolamine from 30 to 40,000 years ago with the Aborigines, several thousand years ago with the Thuggee cult. I may be wrong on that. I'm just assuming how old they are because they worship Kali. And then, of course, the U.S. military and the company itself, the CIA, having it under complete scrutiny down to the point of standardizing it for drugs. And, I forgot, not only hay fever drugs, but cold medicines for the atropine. What we're looking at is they have the knowledge, they have control, they can make the fish flash in any direction that they want to. So there has to be that historical mechanism in place. And the loose thread that we had that I think, only people that are in the know, when you and I and Dr. No talk, we talk in sometimes just grazing over a topic as if the rest of the world knows what we're talking about. I think it'll be very interesting and informative if Dr. No talks about the opium wars, where Britain was actually enslaving China with a horrific addictive drug.
Well, as far as the history of it goes, me, I'm not big on the dates, but let's just talk about philosophy. I didn't make the scopamine connection until you said nightshade. And then when you said that, this has been used culturally for tens of thousands of years amongst Aboriginals, indigenous peoples. And it never ceases to amaze me the vulnerability of the outside influence of, for lack of a better expression, plants or meats or food. We talk about this quite a bit. when it's introduced into a culture that's foreign to it. So we have the Native Americans and their particular genetic susceptibility to alcohol. We have the Chinese and what appears to be a particular genetic susceptibility to opium. And when Patrick talks about the powers that be, or whatever you want to call them, having this information for tens of thousands of years, this is a strategy for them. It's not a new discovery every time. It may be a new discovery is to find out which drug works well, but if you look at the history of the conquest by an empire, the most effective means is always some sort of chemical subversion of that culture. So the British most definitely found that opium, however it worked culturally with the Chinese, was the drug of choice to subvert the population there and make it a silent but deadly conquest. And it's much more effective and less casualties than an out-and-out straight blood war is. The blood war is done mostly for psychological and traumatic effects to scare other enemies as opposed to decimate a population because it's not effective. But if you really want to decimate a population, you find their particular weakness to a substance, especially one that weakens or inhibits their free will to the extent that scopolamine does or opium does, and you've got the perfect weapon. And you would have to be completely and totally out of your mind to assume that this is a strategy that's not being used currently in the population. It's just that the subversion and the delivery methods are more modern, they're more stealthy, and they're suited for the particular effect that's desired by them.
My contention, it's the food chain in this country. Instead of opium or instead of scopolamine, it's the actual food chain as a whole. Right now, the conventional and organic food chain is the weapon and the delivery system.
Well, also, too, we have another component here in modern times is, for lack of a better expression, who we're being enslaved to and the purposes of the enslavement. There's a monetary component now. Okay, and that monetary component is, when you enslave somebody with, say, a drug like opium, okay, there's little benefit to the pharmacological component of it. But when you start enslaving people with what we term to be illness or sickness, which is really nothing more than a particular subset of symptoms that they identify as a disease, now we get the pharmacological industry in here as well. So, it's much more profitable to give somebody cancer and have them go into cancer treatment than it is to get them hooked on opium or alcohol or any other drug for that matter.
The recent press releases are that LSD is great for the anxiety of people that have terminal cancer. So not only are they working to legalize marijuana now that they have genetically altered it into a controlled substance, and I say that twice on purpose, they have control over this controlled substance. Now they're going to release LSD as probably something you could get out of a vending machine, for goodness sakes. And look around, folks. It has always struck me that the basic man and woman off the street act like hallucinating. Nobody can be this insensitive to the insanity that's going on around us unless they are in an altered state of mind. That's why I always sound like I'm agitated and pissed off with the world. How could you not be if you were, quote, unquote, awake and aware?
Most people are not awake and aware about the current reality about what's going on. They live in this illusion that everything's okay. The broad diversity that leads to illness today my reality is you cannot just take a turmeric pill. You can't just have one little thing and then you're going to be better. There's so many contributing factors over the last 100 solid years of assault strategically on the population on the planet. This idea of I'm healthy because I'm not expressing any symptoms is such a shuck and jive, is such a non-reality, it's not a fact. Okay, just because you don't have symptoms yet, although I talked to a person just recently wearing very thick glasses, having raccoon eyes, this skinny, anemic little guy has, I'm healthy. I'm like, really? You consider yourself healthy? Well, yeah, I don't have any diabetes. I don't have cancer. I don't have bipolar or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so, but that doesn't make any sense. You're exhibiting to me all the characteristics of you have some illnesses in there going on under me. You may not even know it. And that's what people start with us. They don't even know how degenerated they are when they start with us on a healing path. And when they start to feel really good, they have, just about everybody makes this comment, I never would have believed that I was ill because I never felt this good before. That is how degenerated we become as a population as a whole. They don't even have no clue of how degenerated we are. That's what really blows my mind to this whole shuck and jive thing, this military assault going on. Like those in China that are taking the opium, or those right now in Afghanistan that are raising the opium on a whole planetary level, on all these different levels. They have no clue as an individual, as a human being, of how ill they are because everyone around them is ill, so that's just the accepted paradigm.
Well, that leads us back to the biology of aggression and living in fear, because what they have you conditioned to look at as the ruler only works in one direction. If you're always looking behind you to see how ill you can be, the terminal marker is always death. But when you realize to look forward to see how well you can be, that's to actually accept your own divineness as a human being and what it is you're actually capable of and what it is you can actually manifest. And there is no end to how good is good or how well is well. And that's the last thing in the world they want you to see. What they want you to see is constantly having to escape what's behind you, death.
So living in denial that I weigh 400 pounds, my blood sugar's through the roof, and yet I'm waiting for this comet to come and hit the Earth, so I will be ascended off into the other reality and is not real?
The break just saved you from one of my rants.
Save it for after the break. All right, welcome back. Halfway through the show, this is an alternate perspective with me, Will, and our friends Patrick Jordan and Dr. No. And we kind of went into the music there a little bit for the break. And Dr. No, I'm sure you have some comments regarding what I began to say.
Well, I'll just chalk it up to the hurry up and wait thing, for lack of a better expression, is the overarching paradigm which ties us back to scopolamine. Shockingly, we've come full circle, which is known as the drug most effective at inhibiting free will, if indeed you believe you have free will to begin with. The overarching paradigm of hurry up and wait. Whether you want to wait for some planetary destruction or some natural catastrophe to save you from your particular ills, whether you want to wait for the patriarchal, external, off-planet savior, whether it be in the form of a dogmatic religion or it be in the form of the Galactic Federation of Light, whether you just want to lock yourself up on your mat in your Birkenstocks and chant fluffy bunny light and lovey unicorn tears thoughts until you ascend into a ball of light. What they want you to do is nothing but wait and put your hopes of some sort of relief or salvation in their hands.
Would this also be like spending all your money on buying dinar? Or how about this other thing about the global reset of the economic financial situation and stuff like that? Would that fall into that hurry up and wait category also?
You know, I believe I'm being incredibly reserved here, and you're just going to keep poking me with that sharp, pointy stick, aren't you?
No, I'm not. That's not my goal, though. My goal isn't to poke you with a stick. My goal is to put all these little pieces together so they fall into this category, so people can hear them strung along in a conversation, so they're not so disjointed. So I understand it may appear that way, but I'm definitely not poking you to go into a rant.
Well, we can look at it this way. If you'd like to tie them all in, we have the Trust of Saint Germain. We have all the super secret hidden gold. We have the whole thing of us being bred as a species that were slaves to mine gold for aliens. We have investing in the dinar. We have the global capital accounts. We have the big three Abrahamic dogmatic religions, which are actually only one religion of the patriarchal external savior. We have the light and love crowd. We have what's become the homeopathic medicine crowd, or the alternative medicine crowd, with their wonderful magic pill of the month. You know, this month it's one pill, the next month it's the other pill to counteract the first pill. It's basically always the same thing, and people feel that just because they have changed their perspective that they're quote unquote enlightened, and all they're doing is going into a bigger cage, or like I say, you know, are you entering the golden age or just entering a golden cage? It all boils down to how far back you want to step and look at the fact that ultimately everything that I just said has one particular thing in common. Do not exercise your individual control over your own life. Give it to someone else.
That's the direction that I wanted to go in. So we can hear all these different lipstick colors are really all to disguise the same pig packed with mud on the outside. It's just all the different colors of the same doggone pig, as Patrick would say. That's what the goal. It wasn't to incite, anything in you. It was to allow the listeners to see the connection between all these other things that appear in and of themselves to be something different, but in reality, when you step back a few steps, they're all part of the same program, the same, what do you want to call it, the same attack on humanity, to keep us disjointed, to keep us fighting amongst ourselves, to keep us separated. And that's what I enjoy about your shows, Dr. No, that you talk about on Thursday evenings, is our responsibility is for ourselves, and when we give it up to somebody else, whether that is to a health guru, whether that is to somebody that's, whatever that is, we are then giving up on ourselves. We are now allowing somebody else to control, to have their say, and to basically manipulate you.
So the problem is on two levels. Number one is this choice level. That seems straightforward enough, the whole Spike Lee thing of do the right thing. But it actually gets a bit crazy because of this global knowledge of phytochemicals where they can actually manipulate our will. I walked into my bank, and the teller asked me for information that I would never, ever volunteer. And I could not resist. And I volunteered it. And after I walked out of the bank, got into fresh air, I thought, what in the heck just happened? I personally would never have done anything that just occurred. So it took a while for me to think this through, recover from it. I went back into the bank, went into a different section of the bank, talked to a different person, and did my best to reverse what had just went on. But see, once you're in the system, you're in the system. And that's the reason why they do things like Congress saying, well, we can't pass the health care law. We can't know what's in the health care law until we pass it. Because once the nose of the camel is in the tent, the rest of the camel follows. And so I had to evaluate what in the heck just happened, and the only thing that I could come up with is that the teller probably, either by choice or just because she was totally ignorant, was wearing some kind of scent, or the bank itself had some kind of delivery system, masked as like an air freshener or something, that had an agent in there, like oxytocin, like scopolamine, whatever, that broke down my ability to say no, because it is not within my personality to do what had transpired during that transaction. So
how about the frequency? How about the frequency? Not just a delivery element, but a frequency in the air.
They have flat screen displays in there that will show you stock tickers, and it'll show you, bank advertisements. You cannot be entrained by newspaper. That's why they went to electronic billboards. They can flash things into your head, and so that's a good catch on your part. That was another aspect of control that they have. So what I'm trying to say is we can make choices. We can be firm in our own minds of what we would do in any given situation. But when you factor in the hypnotics of fluoride in the water, bromine in bread, beer, and soda pop, scopolamine at what levels? Who knows? There has always been a rumor that the CIA puts in titrated doses of LSD into municipal water supplies. We're talking hallucinogenics again. We're talking the breakdown of our will. And so all this stuff has to be stopped. We cannot get ahead of the curve. It was never designed to be that way. It will always be a war of escalation. So the war has to end.
We don't even have to count on the CIA for spiking the water anymore, because our own urine being reprocessed back into the municipal drinking water through ground saturation is putting enough Prozac and other mind-altering chemicals in the water for us. And that's not a rumor. That's been tested in many municipal water supplies.
Not only that, we have the new fangled electronic so-called cellular antennas all over, and a lot of them are on water towers. So we're not only getting the homeopathic version, as well as the flat screen, silent sound type of bombardment in the air, as well as all these elemental things. So it's like they've got their bases covered to make sure that you, the listener, no matter who you are, is getting some form of mind-altering substance or frequency to make sure that you are not going to wake up to what's going on. And if that don't work, go ahead.
Well, that ties back into the whole thing of stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. It's like I said about the chemtrail thing. It's just a delivery system. Because, Patrick, what you have to realize when you stepped into that bank is you stepped into an environment. They don't control, you can break down the components into details, And you can drive yourself crazy with the details. None of us have enough time to actually be experts in every detail. But what you can be aware of is the fact that I am entering into this environment. Before I enter into this particular environment, and my favorite example are gambling casinos. The amount of psychology that is actually studied scientifically in the design of a casino will blow most people's minds. And it is everything from the smell in the air and the component in the air that they pump into the place, the design of the carpets, where they put the machines, everything. Okay, they're creating an environment, and really their level of control has been mastered over the years to the point where your best defense is to realize that when you're in the car in the parking lot, okay, you know, you say to yourself, I'm about to enter an environment whereby I know they have modified the environment to the point where their end is met, not mine. So what is, you know, clarity of mind? What is my intent when I walk in there? What am I looking to do? And how can I do it to get it out?
Not just a casino. We have restaurants. We have, how about shopping centers? Not just how about grocery stores? I've met an individual that his job was to analyze every component of a grocery store and how it routes the people around through the grocery store and the way the whole store is laid out, as well as the color, smells, and all this other stuff. So it's in all parts of our lives that this kind of psychology is being implemented for the corporations' benefits to extract funds in whatever fashion from you, whether that is from actual Federal Reserve notes or your health or your pleasure or your emotions. It's designed to extract from you to benefit the corporation in whatever fashion, period.
And that grocery store example is a perfect example because it demonstrates the, oh, you can't fool me syndrome. When you talk to a grown-up, and I use that term loosely, and you say to them, haven't you ever noticed that all these sugary, cartoony cereals are basically at the eye level of a child? They'll turn around and they'll notice that, and they'll be like, yes. And then when you mention to them that, don't you think that your shopping habits are being programmed or guided in the same way? Oh, no, that only works on children.
You rest your case, yeah.
Hey, you coming from the car industry, I mean, that you have to, I mean, have had that happen in just the car selling industry. That kind of psychology is wrapped all around in that industry, at least from my understanding.
Oh, absolutely. And the beauty of it to me, or the appeal of me, was it was always a blue-collar, instinctual industry, but I got out of the industry during the corporate takeover of the dealerships. Now these dealerships are predominantly owned by these giant corporations who, once again, are using the science of it. And you know, I just tell people the simplest things. You can go to college and you can take a course called behavioral science. It is not called behavioral gambling or behavioral hobbies or behavioral roulette. Okay? Go back to the Tavistock Institute. This is science. You know, it existed long before Tavistock, but Tavistock actually was the modern start of documenting it and turning it into, for lack of a better expression, a curriculum. So once again, anything that they're teaching you or imparting on you, just because I taught you everything you know, does not imply I taught you everything I know. It's a behavioral science, and it is, like you pointed out, Will, it is multifaceted. It's electromagnetic, it's chemical, it's psychological, it's visual, it's audio. It is literally everything. And especially when you enter into a closed environment, like Patrick said, a bank or a casino or a grocery store, Okay, that is the little microcosm of the ultimate in control. They have you cocooned now in this facility where they know exactly where you are, exactly what you're doing, and exactly what to bombard you with to get the end that they want from you.
So let's talk about the they. It seems to me, and I know because we have had many discussions on the topic and the origins of control on especially wolf spirit, it seems to me that the most powerful military on the planet guards opium poppy fields. The only conclusion that anybody with rational thought can derive from that is that these human beings that use lethal force serve the plant. So now you tell me who the higher intelligence is. The supposed mammal with the brain that's just a bit smaller than a dolphin's, or the plant?
Anybody that listened to my Thursday show 2 weeks ago knows the higher power is the mean green mother from outer space. Audrey, too.
Or is it the microorganism that allows the plant to even grow? Because without that microorganism in the soil, the plant can't uptake any nutrition. It's the same way with us. So in my opinion, the microorganisms in their combined consciousness supersedes both the plant and the mammal.
And this is pulling back the curtain. This is that Wizard of Oz moment of the little dog grabbing the material and pulling it back to show the wizened old man running the controls. So is it the human beings? Is it the plant? Is it the microbe? Who are they?
Well, that to me speaks the as above, so below interpretation of the real world. You know, once again, why does it have to be an either or choice? Why isn't it just a manifestation of, at any level, something that is parasitical to the human condition? And at one level, which we talk about a lot, is the pathogenic microbial level, where, you know, more than 50% of the cells that make up our body are basically house guests, and they have a collective consciousness. And if you want to start there and expand fractally upward, there is literally no difference. I mean, we just talked about the supermarket being, you know, a microcosm of that same level of parasitical control. It is a parasite that is taking control of the host and controlling its behavior to the benefit of the parasite and not the host. We can back it down to the cordyceps mushroom. We can take it up to the global bankster pharmacological military industrial occupation, as Patrick speaks of. And if you want to go total woo, you can take it intergalactic. But the fact remains, once again, just like the hurry up and do wait thing, what is the overarching similarity to all of these things? The similarity is there is something that just likes to take control of us and control our behavior to its survival, not to ours.
So it's our job then to determine what level and what playing field are we going to operate on. Because I know a lot of people that are totally fine with exhibiting all kinds of illnesses, on all kinds of drugs, and they are more than happy to continue, whether it's actually living that way or switching over to the natural health world and then doing all this other they're totally fine with just playing this revolving merry-go-round of illness. I know other people, like myself, I'm not happy with that. I found my own game to play. Really, that's an individual choice in my book.
Well,
which game are you going to play?
Not only is it an individual choice, but once again, it speaks taking a step back and realizing what free will is, or look at it from the terms of being a quote-unquote functioning alcoholic. Okay? Just because I am subjected to this parasitism at one level, biochemical, the fact that I can function in other levels of society without that hindering me makes it be okay. Well, it's the same thing. How many people out there are completely and totally healthy, well, relatively healthy, so to speak, and perhaps that level of parasitism doesn't inhibit them like on the biological level, but yet they go about their day on the same hamster wheel being parasitized at a different level. So they're not disjointed. They work together. If you allow yourself to be parasitized at the hamster wheel level, then obviously that's going to have a biological effect on you. If you take care of your body, it's easier to take care of your mind. Patrick says that all the time about talking about Eastern philosophy and martial arts. To train the body is to train the mind. And Will, you point out over and over that the subconscious is the body.
All right, well, welcome back. Last section of An Alternate Perspective. And Dr. Noel, you were talking about something. We went right into that. The music started playing. Did you need to finish or repeat or anything there?
No, I think I was good.
Okay. We want to go in any other direction here on the last section here, fellas?
We haven't heard from Patrick in a while. Is he there?
I'm here.
That's what I'm thinking.
Checking my notebook, and Will, you opened the show that you said you had some topics that you wanted to bring up.
Well, we've pretty much woven just about everything into what we've been talking about. That's the really cool thing about having these everything's related to everything else. So I just pretty much everything got, there again. Listeners, if you want to know more, participation in a conversation to get what information you want, your questions answered, is paramount. So if you want to know anything, you got the chat rooms there. Us, email us, figure out how to get a hold of us if you want us to talk about anything in specifics. But for the most part, we've pretty much woven everything in so far. So this is just a conversation here the last half hour, unless somebody, chimes up and enters in. Do you have anything that we in your notebook there?
Well,
we need to
the thing that I would like
clarify
is, once we identify what the threats are and what route that they might be delivered in, then it's our obligation to actually avoid them. So one of the things that we do is we let people know what is wrong out there, and it's like a map, of a land, a plot of land that has landmines on it. Don't step here. But you actually have to navigate your life within this military system. So you can't just dig in a trench and be a hermit, because they'll come and get you anyway. So we have to negotiate our path with full knowledge of don't step here. But there are certain things that you can do to avoid, getting limbs blown off, so to speak. That's a metaphor. And, just avoid the things that they make for you. Avoid the shampoos, avoid the cologne, avoid the perfume, avoid the aftershave, avoid all these things that even if you read the label, even if you think you can read the big words and know what they mean, you have no idea what's in them because you didn't make it yourself.
That goes into responsibility for self, though. You see, and we have a society today as a whole society that I like to refer to as the welfare society, where you don't really have to do anything or think anything yourself. You just go to the store and buy it. And in that reality of that welfare state, you give up all your rights, you give up all your responsibility, and then you can blame everyone else because your unfulfilled expectations are not being met. That's the society we live in today, really.
Well, along those lines, once again, like you say, is when you want to take responsibility for yourself, what are you taking responsibility for? And you need to step back and realize that
Are you there, Dr. No? Because I can't hear you.
I just heard you say something, Patrick. There must be some really long delays and skip going on here.
No, he dropped off. He dropped off. There, he's back.
Am I back?
Yeah. We stopped hearing you.
Yeah, you might as well do it all over again.
Well, when you talk about taking personal responsibility, once again, it's important to take that giant step backwards and understand what that means. That doesn't mean necessarily picking another choice that's offered to you. More than usually it means forging your own path. And, we spoke about at what level of the as above, so below you need to forge that path at. Small steps vertically integrated seem to do much more benefit, at least for me personally. But most importantly, in the age of the internet, and this maxim has always been true, you will always find what you seek. So be very careful what you predispose yourself to before you go looking for answers.
Because it's part of that dialectic. They will always have the ready answer on either side of a preformed debate.
Absolutely.
And a very large part of what we're talking about is economic choices. If you stop buying the shampoo, the aftershave, the cologne, the perfumes, any vehicle where they can get into your body and into your central nervous system, that is an economic choice. And if they don't have the sustenance of those exchange units, then they will not be able to use that route of delivery.
And nowadays, with the introduction of some of these genetically modified viruses, bacteria, and fungi, and actually the natural occurring ones that have been weaponized, you can use the natural stuff in the alternative world in a degenerated body to get to the same means in the end of an illness as you could just by using the old shampoo, the chemicalized shampoos, personal health care products, and soaps. So it's like they have the whole natural alternative world just as compromised, because it has really nothing to do with the outside environment per se. It has everything to do with the microcosm. The community within us is that out of balance, and we have had so many of these pathogens and parasites modified and delivered into the body. That is the key, is the internal balance. And if you don't know what's going on inside the body, if you're just guessing with the current information that's out there, you will just continue to degrade yourself by switching from the conventional world over to the organic world. Because out there in that you have only option A and an option B. You have Democrat or you have Republican. You have the allopathic system and the naturopathic system. That's the options you have, A or B. And I'm saying neither one are valid. It has everything to do with the option 3, which is your internal environment, your internal state of health, whether on all the levels, psychological, emotional, and physical. And that is where... Oh, go ahead.
I'll finish your thought.
I'm saying that is the focus. That's the focus that we need to, that I would say, this is my focus, that information, or coming from that place of internal balance, my responsibility for my internal balance is only dependent on me. And the technology that we have acquired and are using has the ability to see the internal imbalance and then provide options to return the balance internally. And then you can then only look at the external secondary. Okay, that's the end of my thought. Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I thought you're going to bring up the topic of Tom's of Maine toothpaste. I'm saying that as a joke. Because let's take a look at it. In the 1980s, I was actually shocked when Tom's of Maine started adding fluoride to their toothpaste. But I didn't know that they were bought out by Colgate. And so everything starts as something that has an outward appearance. But what they do is they co-opt it, and they cook the frog slowly. They slowly change the substance as they have compromised it, and all of a sudden you're using what you think is pure and natural, and it's got fluoride in it. But then, owing to your insights, Will, we take it back a step further. Well, you using Tom's of Maine, I'm speaking in the royal sense, people in general were using Tom's of Maine toothpaste that had some really nice glycerin in it, maybe. And maybe also had some sodium lauryl sulfate in it, maybe. Nice degreasing agent and nice anaerobic film causing agent in it. So again, even when you thought you were using the natural and pure stuff, it was something that you didn't make. You didn't know what the ingredients were. You had no idea what the impact was. And slowly over time, they did the bait and switch, the shuck and jive, the switch from Tom's to Colgate, and you're back in the same hole. You never left the hole because you jumped in it with both feet and let somebody else dictate to you and give to you what your choices were.
I noticed that just last. Oh, go ahead, Dr. No.
That actually leads me to another point, and that is the discouragement aspect in it. There are so many things that you can address, from the simplest, like the toothpaste, to the most grandiose. And one of the tactics that they use is to set you up for failure because it's so morally discouraging. So, paying attention to the details, like Patrick just said, is you get turned on to the idea that I'm going to do something healthy for myself, and as soon as they realize that healthy alternative exists, what happens? Well, they get it under control, and they co-opt it as well. It's roughly equivalent to being concerned about chemtrails and being depressed that you can't go outside with a Stinger missile and shoot the planes down. They look to discourage you. They look to disempower you. So once again, when you begin to exercise your personal control, there's so many avenues you can address it on. the smallest success can be more self-empowering than the most self-defeating, grandiose failure of, it's just me, one little person against them. And once again, even on the level of toothpaste, they know that, and they use that against you.
That's the smoke and mirrors and the shuck and jive that we, as an individual human being, can alter, transform our way of thinking just wrapped around that topic. Thank you so much, Dr. No. And this is where people, other human beings that I get to work with, when we just change your perception of your place and your status in life. Most people that are ill have at least some awareness of being victimized. You are being the victim. When you change that, just that perception, I'm no longer being victim. That change in perception, that transformation that takes place physically as well as psychologically, is so huge. I got in personal, in 2007, I got sprayed with pesticides in a 40-mile-an-hour wind. I got drifted on. They were spraying potatoes. I was driving down the township road, and actually my whole window looked like all of a sudden it got rained.
Guess what, folks? Skype dropped the whole call again. The boys up at Skype are really doing their job today.
I'm here.
You're back. Skype really dropped the call today.
I'm back. Thanks, Dave, for handling that. Appreciate that.
Well, I can't get Rev Radio back.
Oh, everything went down.
The whole call went down. Skype.
I guess they don't want to.
Go ahead and put it out. You got it.
I guess the AI doesn't want to hear the story.
I do. Go ahead.
Okay, so a couple of years later, and after I really got clear on the psychological perception of things, right, I got sprayed again. I was driving down Interstate I-80. What's that? Dave, you got to tell me what's going on. I can't. All kinds of noise.
I hear that too. I don't know where it's coming from. It's coming from, I think, the Fusion Center again.
Okay, so Patrick, all three of us are here, and Dave?
No, Bob isn't here because I can't get a hold of him. But we're back on. We're back live on Studio A.
Oh, we're back live now. Okay. So anyhow, we're just going to persist here. So I got sprayed. I was having a lot of problems. A couple of years later, my perception about the realization about how my perception of my reality, controls my biological reality. I got sprayed again. Just as bad. Covered my window, smelling awful. I made a conscious choice. My conscious choice was I'm not going to go into fear mode. I'm just going to observe this to see what happens. I did not have the physical detriment take place to my body because I just chose to perceive my reality differently. When we perceive we're being victimized and we have no choice in the matter, and when we perceive ourselves not being victimized and we do have another choice, our body will respond, our psychological state will respond in such a positive fashion. That alone makes a huge difference in our biological health, is just how we perceive our reality and how we perceive us in our reality. And like Dr. Noah was saying earlier, or Patrick or whoever, doesn't matter, we were talking about they. You know what? I have come to the conclusion that I don't really give a hoot who they is. They are only basically the boogeyman in my life. And it's up to me to either allow the boogeyman into my life and cause havoc, or I don't allow the boogeyman in my life. And he is definitely not going to cause havoc in my life. And just that alone has a significant positive impact in my physical, biological health. That's huge. Bruce Lipton has been talking about this for 20 years. And there's that whole science of epigenetics and energy psychology. That is science. There's a science about the perception, how we perceive our life. I would suggest everybody find out about that. If not, get a hold of us. Me, in particular, if you can't get a hold of the other two. So we only got a couple of minutes left. Patrick, you got anything else? We got like 3 minutes or 2.5 or something. Are you here, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm here.
Did you catch any of that? Because I know we got cut off and stuff. So
on the topic of...
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. No.
A lot of connection problems today. But on the topic of positive proof of the positive attitude, is Will, you know as well as I do, that even Mr. Doom and Gloom, Patrick Jordan, is all Julie Andrews frolicking around singing when he's naked in the moonlight burning potato bugs with his acetylene torch, worshiping at the mechanistic church. If we can get Patrick to be happy with just some positive results, think about what we can do for the rest of humanity.
I describe that as the Klingon outlook on life. The legend that was built by the television series Star Trek is that the Klingons were a warrior race, and they actually took pleasure in doing battle. And what we've got in the biology of aggression is that aggression has been bred out of test populations, whether they be rodents or humans, and nobody takes any kind of just there's no investment, there's no ardor, there's no I'm looking for the right adjectives. They always escape me. People just don't pursue the Spike Lee thing of do the right thing. If you're in a battle, then fight.
I'd like to make a suggestion that we have a caller from 775 area.
We have like 1 minute left.
Hi, my name's Gary, and I'm from Reno here. I've talked to you before. I'd like to really have you continue this topic, because that's when they took you out. Everything on your connections went to hell. It was your position about being a victim and so forth. So, but what you're saying sounds like to me a dichotomy between Dr. No. It sounds like Will is taking the position of the love and light folks, perceiving their reality, and Dr. No eschews that attitude. So I'd like to have you clear that up, because that's a problem for my mind, trying to wrap around.
Well, we're going to have to do that next show, Gary. I appreciate you calling in, now.
All right. I think this is important because, like I said, that's when they took you out.
We'll definitely cover that on next show. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
This is Rebecca Jernigan. You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
This is Dave from the Wolf's Den Studio saying welcome to Wolf Spirit Radio. Wolf Spirit Radio is totally listener supported. by folks like you who choose to help us stay on the air and grow.